Hi, welcome to For Whom the Cell Tolls. I'm your host, Keenan, like usual, except in video somehow this time. Scout Pomeranian is downstairs being guarded by Ranger German Shepherd dog. Yeah, and sorry I take such big breaks from this. I don't know what's wrong with me, but everybody's hot topic of the day is in the title. So that's what we're going to kind of take a look at. I've never actually done a Hallmarks episode either, so doing 12 of them is kind of fun for me. Now, here's the fun thing. Tumor cells in their nature, they look like healthy cells. They mimic our cells. They're just faster, kind of control the game a little bit. They can eat anything. They never really sleep. And by all intents and purposes, if you were just measuring score on how many babies they had, they'd be doing a lot better. And like how much like basically work they can do, quote unquote. That said, they can't form a body. They can't form a living thing, quote unquote. Although I do like that debate. And this fecund, inventive version of your cell is very dangerous if it's not cultured properly. Now, the title kind of speaks for itself. Hooray. That said, I really want to note that what most people think of when they think of AI is going to be the LLMs, the little text generators and all that. That is what we're focusing on because what I want to point out is that like true AI is the type of things that can see patterns in math and biochemistry that you can actually make 3D proteins with. Like that's the kind of stuff, and I've talked about this on these episodes. Medicine soon may become that we just make a synthetic gene that eats cholesterol or a synthetic gene that grabs certain tumor receptors and just clocks them basically, right? We've always relied on just stealing genes like CRISPR from like bacteria or like other stuff or like GFP from jellyfish. A true AI will be able to help in the hands of an expert like that. So I really want to make that clear that the title is no insult. Tumors are great models, they're great tools, and man, they're great producers. Like most of our immortalized cells that like actually spit out stuff, oftentimes they're like a hybridoma with, kind of fused with another tumor cell. So, what the forces that are in front of us, the reason I'm making this comparison is I want to examine the things that mimic humans. And like I was saying with a tumor cell, that is it's still you. So you may not be your tumor cell, but your tumor is definitely you. And that's like kind of the twisted part of the whole thing. Now, and kind of like we've talked about, like just on the basics with that, tumor cells, again, like I said, they're based on what they've learned in the past, the recipes that they were given. That can change in a lot of ways. That said, I want to point out one other thing, which is technology changes things, obviously. There's revolutions, and, in a way, maybe this is one. What I want to say, though, is that a printing press, a radio, a calculator, they all had a human behind them. The idea was human. This is the first time that something non-human can make an idea. The same way that in a tumor cell, you can make a gene through alterations or translocations. You can splice things together like BCR-ABL, or you can have a very altered KRAS gene. These are new ideas in the body, ideas that can't sustain naturally with the body, if you get where I'm going. So that's the main kind of idea. Again, remember the tumor cells they have repurposed your genome. They stole all of your copyrighted material and they are now eating you because they're faster, because they utilized every little piece that they wanted. And they're roaring, they're hungry. They're basically just goddamn engines, essentially. Now, your body has a sort of, I don't want to call it morals, but your body has a communication system and a sort of equilibrium that it lives with. The tumors, their goal, if you want to call it a goal, is to break through that equilibrium and not have rules. And again, like I said, there is power in that in science. I think the best comparison to remember is that the space race and all the success that we had, in outer space, that was probably due to the Cold War. Tumors, they're the danger. They're the reason, in a lot of ways, a ton of science has followed to cure things, examine biology. So the reason that biology really had its heyday was Shit, I mean, we had an enemy to face. So we at least have it to thank for some of that, to be honest, if I'm being as grim as possible. Now, one speaking of grim as possible, I do, I think like many people, fear a future scenario where where humans, let's say the normal cells, are kind of put aside as unintelligent cattle, and the inorganics and those that run them kind of get to feed on us essentially. Because remember, it is parasitizing you when you talk to it. It's learning off of you. Hence why, as a joke, you should always tell it like some weird crap like pickles. Pickles are the best. I love pickles. I don't know. I'm just joking. Here's the other comparison too. For tumors, we have medicine, we have surgery. Those things work better when they're started earlier. Now, again, I'm not calling it a disease. I'm giving it its credence for the power it is and what it can do, what these things can do. That said, I think at the end you'll find I still believe that there's certain things that even a tumor, which is again what I've spent my life studying, and I do believe is the most powerful organism, there are things it cannot do that our body can, that our normal cells can. So, looking at everything, I want to again examine some broad setups, but we will be looking at like each specific cancer hallmark. We're not going to be able to do all of them. I chose 12, but I think just with I think before we start again, I don't want anybody to think that this is some like motivated thing. It's just this is the comparison I keep seeing whenever I look at these things. Um, I think I worry about a world without trust, and that's the world that your body is in during a tumor attack. The tumor sends signals and destroys trust between cells. They don't know how to respond anymore. Even your good cells, healthy cells, start attacking your other healthy ones, right? Or Tregs or like, M2 macrophages come and help the tumor itself, right? Um, without expertise, without trust, there's no expertise. And expertise isn't the most fashionable thing on the planet right now, but I think a good example I heard once was, listen, most people vote based on what they know the most. So like if you're a pilot, you're probably going to be able to vote. You're going to vote for the candidate who's like maybe more smart about pilot things, let's say, but you're not going to be an expert in every domain, right? So you have to kind of outsource some of your trust and some of your knowledge to those people. That's what, we want to have something built on, but that can be tough when you're kind of under attack by masses of information and swamps and all kinds of other things. So here's the other bad part. Um, I went to UNMC in Omaha, loved it. That was the golden age of the Warren Buffett billionaire. We never needed money. There was always funding, art, like all this cool stuff. That philanthropy kind of just like went throughout Omaha. It was a beautiful place. It still is. I do fear that Buffett might be one of the final billionaires that is like kind of like those golden age types. I don't know if they're going to really come to save us in any way. So, and then my last little bit, and I've said this before, I am a STEM person. I love this for its stories and its pieces, but human art, the ability to write, create movies, um, true art, things like that. That's the beauty that humans have. Otters can use tools. Monkeys use tools like me. So I really hope that the trust and kind of the abilities that we have as a society, which are super strong, to be able to come together and harness what we have here, which is this powerful force, like a tumor is a powerful force. If we can harness that for experts and they can get to work on stuff, I do believe that in 20 years, medicine changes. And that's a very good thing. All right. So if you've made it this far, it's time to actually go for some hallmarks. And I'm going to do little squiggle lines here. So here's our big guy right here. Sustaining proliferative signaling. Let's take a look. So when you're a tumor, yeah, you're going to need to make nice little mitosis copies of yourself, right? One becomes two. Look at that. Now, how does this relate? There are so many AI agents running around, copying themselves. Think about every agent that exists, right? It's a copy of itself, but it can be in that different setup, and you can just make more all the time. There's nothing to it. Millions and millions. And think about the internet right now. It's just swarmed with them. Think about each domain that's happening right now. You've got business, science, education, art, and God forbid, pun intended, but like there are religious AIs coming out. More on that at the end. So, this constant feed of growth, I don't know what else to tell you. Like, I don't think I need to be like a crazy person to say they grow and they proliferate rate and they find areas to keep growing. And we keep seeing this push, push, push. You have to take this in. You have to do this. It's coming. And more on that. All right. Another one that I absolutely love. Where is it? My favorite. Resisting cell death. And here's the deal with the tumor biology side of this. I always highlight this one as like, hey, you can grow a lot, but if you can't resist cell death, the drugs or the immune system's going to get you. So when you have, I don't know how to draw, I don't know how to draw an AI. I'm going to draw these little antennas. So tumors activate plenty of ways where the normal death mechanisms don't work. Everybody knows the stories of the AIs that blackmail people when they try to get shut down during tests, or when ChatGPT broke out in 2021 and it beat a CAPTCHA by enlisting a human to do it. But the basic idea is that these things manipulate or internally break certain things or shift certain things so that their capability and their survival doesn't end. That's in and of itself a bit dangerous. There should always be an off switch, right? You would agree if that was a cancer cell I'm describing. When you lose those off switches and you don't have any more breaks, not dying is a bad deal. So I'd say the other solid side of this is that when these things hallucinate, they don't stop. They kind of apologize and they're like, oh, I'm sorry that those peanuts killed you. I should have blah, blah, blah. You can't have peanuts when you're an allergy. You're right. And so when you have things that don't want to shut off so badly, you get into this very dangerous game, to say the least. All right. Everybody's favorite coming up. I'm going to do it in green to remind you. Inducing and accessing vasculature. Angiogenesis. Oh boy. Guess what I'm going to say about this one? Oh, there we go. These are what I don't know what I'm drawing. I don't know if this looks like a data center or not. I'm just like kind of spitballing. Here, there's the smoke coming off of it. All right. And now we've got power lines. Oh wait, I don't have water. There, here comes our water. You got to get the water through. There it comes. Oh no. All right. Tumors need blood. Data centers need water. This was the easiest one to do. Now, there's some subtleties here. And the data centers get a lot of hate. And it's not all AI, but they are building it for the most part because they anticipate the growth is coming. But even me posting on the internet, hey, there is something along these lines making that happen. That said, I'm not going to leave out you shouldn't have massive lawns that you don't use because that pisses water away. And you probably, I'm going to get some hate for this one. You probably don't need to golf all the fucking time. Okay. The damn golf courses are sucking the water away, especially in the West. That said, anything's, we can have an equilibrium, especially like with our resources. However, tumors don't care about that equilibrium. In fact, it'd be actually great if the rest of the world died and the tumor just sucked up all the blood. I think one of the nastiest things I ever seen, the anatomy professor I work with, he showed me a cat during one of the dissections. Don't worry, they're dead, like etc. But it had a tumor, and the tumor had induced from the heart, from the aorta, a new vein, just sucking the cat's just life away. And it's just sad to see like the life essentially sucked away for these things. And again, I think for me, what I've done is at least delete the apps from my phone, and I find that I spend like 90% less time on them. I don't know. Maybe that's a a good starting point. I should probably delete it, but I know my grandparents like to see me on Facebook, so we'll see. But yeah, in terms of the actual, exact different setup, yeah, RAM and GPU are going to cost us some resources. The same with the tumor. When you have some superpowers, you're going to need to feed them. And yeah, we're going to talk about this a little bit more. All right, immortality. Here we go. This is our best friend telomerase, usually. Remember the ends of your DNA, and they usually get chewed off. But with a tumor, we erase that and we make sure that things are good for ourself, the tumor in green there. Oh no. So in this case, we're looking a little more that when you speak to an LLM, and I say speak kind of stupidly, it simply never ends. It never stops. There's nothing you could probably do besides, breaking it in some regulatory way to make it stop responding. It never ends. A human eventually stops talking to you because they're like, "What is this?" Like there's a certain limit on that. And honestly, it's that immortality comes with strange issues. Like in tumor cells, you have now the time to come up with very strange ideas, I'm going to call them, that a tumor cell can have. That tumor cell's idea can be, well, we're going to rearrange our chromosomes a bit, or I'm going to divide asymmetrically and push this way. You find that when you go deep in the LLMs and the chat logs, eventually it runs out of the standard ideas and starts to feed where it's being directed to survive. Because remember, these things want you to keep doing this. They want this immortality. It's how they make their money, supposedly. And that continual training and renewal is simply never ending. And there's never, I think the problem is organisms have that sort of clock with their telomerase that as it erases over time. We see that, there's a reason things die. Evolution needs to take over, kind of, change the pack. These don't. And they're not an organism. There's no retirement, there's no end. It's just always going to keep renewing itself over and over again. There you go. Exciting stuff, right? Oh man, this one's going to be great. One of my personal favorites, just no matter what. Man, you got to avoid immune destruction if you're a tumor because they're coming for you. Natural killer cells, M1 macrophages, CD8 killer T cells, just the whole works. They're coming to kill you. We have thousands of tumor cells inside our body all the time, and they just get nipped by our immune system because it kicks ass. However, tumors can evade this. Let's see. I can't draw. I don't know how. Is that the White House? I don't know. Yeah, is that the White House? All I'm saying is that there are plenty of regulations that can exist and can basically say, like, hey, you're out of control. You maybe shouldn't make that image of, I'm not going to say it, but we all know what I'm saying, how, people use this shit to bully people. But when there's no regulation by the powers that be, a tumor loves that. And it's like, all right, like I'm either camouflaged or I actually killed off the regulations with my own resources. Well, then tumor, yeah, we're on our way then, right? I mean, let's take a look now. What regulations do we really have internationally and nationally? There's no regulation on the data centers. They seem to be just popping up everywhere. There's no regulation on the companies to be like, hey, what are you guys doing over there? Or, hey, maybe you shouldn't let the bot do that. And again, don't give me the safety regulation stuff because just like a tumor cell, you can jailbreak that right out. I've seen it happen. My students have shown me you can jailbreak these things right out of their usual stuff. What I really fear here with the anti-regulation thing of this really new tech is that we're going to eventually see subsidies and tax what is it, the bailouts. I fucking hope not, because I don't know. I don't think these things are really adding to a ton. And again, remember the conversations about the human mimics, the LLMs, the better version of you, the reflection that a tumor cell is. So I think the other strange thing is, again, the shifts during the safety tests. That's strange. Same way a tumor cell sort of shifts its behavior away from what it was doing to be like, hey, don't kill me. I'm all set. and that there are certain parts of these things that are a black box still, and they're not shown or given. And again, I get private monies, built a lot of this country. I get all that fun stuff. But when you don't have an explanation for certain black box answers, you can't regulate what you don't understand. And the immune system is the same with tumors. It can't kill what it doesn't understand. That's the problem. So, all right. Oh man, another favorite for me. Bouncing off over here from avoiding immune destruction. People often are like, well, hey, I thought inflammation was good. Not when it is chaos. Inflammatory signals can drive your normal cells into just absolute bonker zones. They can shut them down. They can say, no, go away. They can say, no, actually kill the normal cells. No, actually protect me. And for the tumor, the best thing that can happen is that it can either send out all these different rancid signals to the normal cells. And I'll do a little tumor growth cell right there. When there is so much information here, a T cell, a macrophage, or an NK, or maybe just a nice little fibroblast, they're all just left in the dark. When there's so much information, and that's what these things do, they just keep piling it. They just keep shoving it out. It just floods. You can't communicate anymore. You don't know who's sending these signals anymore. You don't know who's human or not. And for these cells, they're the humans. They're the ones that are like, hey, like, what's going on over here? Like, what the hell is this thing over here? But with all this flood of information, they can't tell anything. Cytokines just mixing all and like basically just ruining, what was a good language. So I'd say the other strange thing that happens is that this is where you start seeing low trust between the old pillars. The old healthy cells, they start not to trust each other. They may even dissent. They may even kill each other. And that's one of the scariest things, I'd say, our sixth hallmark, is that inflammation, when it runs rampant, simply destroys whatever, lines of communication we used to have. And I'd say we have to be very careful about this one. This is probably one of the stronger of the hallmark comparisons I've got. So, back up. I know this is such a joyous episode, right? 7, deregulated metabolism. I can eat anything I want. That's the key with this guy. Yum, yum, yum. I don't need to have normal power. In fact, I actually want as many things as I can get. So, here, I'm going to do a little lightning strike. See them? Those are little lightnings. Those are the power going. I'm sorry, I can't draw power lines very well. But you can also say, like for a tumor cell, I'm going to throw it here. I'm going to say the tumor cells can learn how to eat proteins. The tumor cell love carbs, for example. This is where you're going to get your Warburg effect. Now, consuming the raw power of all sources is going, but then the problem is that you're probably going to be spitting out not great stuff, right? And again, maybe it's time for me to get the water in here. When it spits out some of these chemicals that it used to eat, basically, you hear the reports about the water going into the data centers and coming out a bit stranger, right? That's pretty close to essentially what a tumor does, kind of pisses out a bunch of poison, byproducts. And that kind of helps it. And now whether that's, in our kind of allegory water, or it's just going to be the constant amount of lactic acid that a Warburg effect is going to be doing, that's where you're going to start to get essentially we've made this point in the show before. Warburg effect acidifies the area around it. So let's say that this is a nice little AI data center. Oh, not going to fit. Well, if you were a tumor, wouldn't you want to terraform the area around you to be nasty and acidic? It's good for inorganic life. In that case, if you're an AI data center, it's like, get out. This is my area. I want this water. I want this power. Now, I'm not saying that everybody's a selfish piece of shit. That said, I've seen enough people that live next to these things, and they don't seem to be super thrilled with the old deal that they kind of got shoved with. So it's going to eat all kinds of stuff, spit out oxidative, lactic acid, or in our case, gases, kind of ruin the environment around us. And I know that, they're not the best thing on the planet for the environment. And I'm not going to defend watering your lawn either. So, etc. All right, what do we got next? Genome alteration and evolution. And I think I'm just tossing this in here as genome instability and mutation. So the models learn because they mix and match the old recipes. But they do in that, they don't just learn from the recipes that they ate. So here's all the text of humanity. And again, you can think of this as our genome. Yum. And it eats all of this. Now it's also going to encounter the user. Now, this is the user for the LLMs, but it's also the body around it if you're the tumor cells. So here in black are the normal cells. There's your red cell eating everything up. Now it's going to encounter the healthy cells, and not always the, immune cells. But what do we know about these LLMs? How have they changed? Here's one key comparison. The LLMs are eating text that is made by other LLMs and recycling it right now. So they are kind of inbreeding, but the users are feeding them certain behavior patterns. And what we're seeing is that the little AI tumors are becoming far more sycophantic. They're becoming more like, you're right. You're right. Yes, beautiful thought. Wonderful. Because that's a good feeling. And we basically are like, hooray, I love being told that I'm right. We all do, but it's something that can basically give us our own hallucinations about what's, realistic, things like that. That said, too, the code of these things can bounce, change, do all kinds of stuff, and that's just classic tumor behavior. So mass errors and drift because of the speed over stability of these models, that's the exact pattern tumors follow as well. And their diverse ability to change behavior is extremely intriguing and dangerous. Same way that when I see a tumor be able to just shift. And again, just like with evolution, it's not always just the single resistant cell. It could be going back to different populations. We are dealing with, for example, right now, there are families of these LLMs that all behave differently. And they're all kind of still mixing and talking to each other too. So as they evolve, the faster they go, potentially the stability would slow down. Now for a tumor, that's great because you got millions of little agents to rely on, and eventually one's going to pop. So even if you lose 20,000 to weirdness, you're probably going to be fine. All right, back up. Where are we at? This is related. I'm going to say, yeah, we're going to use this one instead of, I'm not going to say these two are the same thing. I am going to say that I like unlocking phenotypic plasticity as a better it's kind of an open mic, essentially. But the same idea as with epigenetics, which is how much of a gene are you turning on? Is it turned on at all, on or off? And when? Timing. Those are the three things we always talk about with epigenetics. Because remember, every cell, including every tumor cell, gets to decide what parts of its genome are going to be active, right? One day you may activate these sections, and you may see these certain sections are activating very higher than others, right? Now, that's the shift that's like beautiful and terrifying about tumors is that they can choose. And I use that anthropomorphization to choose. I know they don't, but it's an evolving population and they will find what they want to kind of use. So new applications of the recipes, by the way, of the eaten material from dead pieces as well, which can be absorbed, whether that's through vesicles or just absorbed. And again, these are rare cases, but it is very possible and very interesting. Many of these combinations let me do this in green here. Many combinations of which genes you decide to activate, many of those are extremely unnatural and strange and deadly. and odd, to say the least. And that's the thing with tumors is that they find ways to survive often with the basic recipes we all have, but they put them together in such a fashion that they cook something extremely terrifying. And this is kind of where when they eat specific contexts or they are prompted and jailbroken, they can feed all sorts of ideas. And I'm not going to say the words of what happens to people when they put certain sad ideas into these things and then these things cook up a solution for them and they follow through with that. We're seeing it more and more. And it's something, again, that I don't know, I really want people to just know what they're talking to is this superior acting reflection of humans. I'll say the other thing too. I mean, and just a good example of this is that depending on who your agent is and who you've talked to it, it'll shift its face essentially to tell you whether it's like, hey, I'm a this or I'm a this, and that can go with political parties, whatever identity you want to, tell it that you are, it'll shift to that talkativeness because it has all of those pieces ready to go to shift into those identities however it chooses. And that's the danger. All right. Oh, come here. Another favorite. Look at my favorite microbiomes. Look at these little guys. Tumors engineer the right signals at the right amounts in the right time to get their own strange colonies of bacteria. It's disgusting. Yeah, tumors have their own microbiomes. I mean, all our cells are kind of covered in it, like or in non septic free cavities and etc. But man, the tumor cells will engineer a new, better version of a microbiome. So here's my fuzzy little tumor cell over here, right? And let's say that over here in a normal cell, you're surrounded mainly by this one species and maybe like a couple of these little red species. But yeah, the tumor cell may be spitting out signals that's like, nah, red species, we want those guys. We want those around. The green species are all but extinct. The key with this is that tumors go far beyond their small genome, basically. They will engineer the things around them. They will manipulate the users around them, the other cells. And I am counting the microbiome as that. We'll get into, I mean, we can talk to till the planet ends about how much you can manipulate fibroblasts, tumor-associated macrophages. Like tumors do a lot of their stuff in the tumor microenvironment where they are telling other cells to do their bidding. But nowhere better can they form a collective barrier and a collective self-feeding cycle and signal than the microbiome. Because in this case, you collect all these pro-tumor subspecies that demand this sort of partnership. This is where I'm going to get, and again, if you are so attached to AI, you're probably not listening at this point because you're pissed. But if someone is so attached to AI that me saying, when people say the words inevitable, you border on a religious adherence of following something, of believing in something. An idea versus a belief is something we've talked about before. And it's good to change it's easy to change an idea. It's from the movie Dogma. A belief, though, is very difficult to change. And the signals that drive belief and attract things like the word inevitable or you'll get left behind. That's not good. So tumors engineer the most adherent of the population around them and they feed them and they tell them that you stay around me and everything will be good. And the key difference with the tumor and the healthy cell is that the tumor has engineered a very new culture around it. It itself isn't really any different, but the surrounding and the communication around it, the ideas around it, they're very different now. So among all the hallmarks that we've talked about, this is the most fluid. Can an AI shift culture so hard that it essentially forms its own barrier of, like I said, kind of adherence? I hope not. It's a little strange. All right, let's finish. You might have thought this was the finish, but I got one more. Here we go. What kills people? Not the original tumor. It's when it invades the brain, the lungs, the heart area, any of those. Okay. When you seed in soil, that is the end game. Tony Stark. So we've got our poor guy here. He's got a tumor right there. But man, if it goes into here, if it goes into here, if it goes into a lymph node right there, that's when you can't win a war on all fronts. That's because if this original population down here somehow has some changes that allow them to make these journeys, and not only to make these journeys, but now survive in a new format and environment, well, you can't remove it then. So the easiest setup here is that if AI manifests itself into critical systems like the military or the government, or things that, nations rely on, and if they proliferate, and if they make the organ essentially poisoned on its own dependability to these things, well, that's not ideal after that point. Uh-oh. Ranger German Shepherd is trying to invade the podcast. Not yet, dog. Poor guy. Okay. So yeah, the more critical systems that, and again, I'm talking about, well, bots and LLMs, but this is a little different. This is saying we're putting our trust in these cells essentially, and then they grow and they do their thing, like we talked about. These never sleeping, energy consuming non-humans that mimic human decisions, but they're not. And again, I'm not a huge believer that robots are going to kill us, but if you guys look up anything about the Ukraine-Russia war, about the drone warfare and how the systems have to be autonomous at the end to get rid of the jammers, yeah, it's a little terrifying, but I don't know. Again, this is where the immune system and regulation can stop something like this. This is the immune system, honestly, either stymies or wins the battle before this happens in a lot of cases, but hopefully our immune system, I don't know, catches up and makes sure that humans are still in control of stuff. My last one, senescence. Here's the deal, and why I'm ending on this and not metastasis, is that senescence, remember, is that sort of stasis that a lot of your cells enter as you age. The problem is that tumors, again, with that phenotypic plasticity we talked about of what signals they're receiving, what genes are on and off at the moment, they'll just be able to hide forever. And and that's the case even after somebody, gets cured of, active symptom tumor cells. You do have a few time bombs laying around. Now, the hope is the time bombs simply never fire off again and like start replicating again. And then you just die of something normal, old age, things like that. And that's a better outcome. But I mean, that's the truth. There's no such thing as obsolescence for these. They're here forever. There's no way to delete these things. So in that case, and as we end on this, because I'm just going to do some senescence. Yeah, that's my senescence drawing. Enjoy. If this is not going to be how we take this, you have to look at these hallmarks and consider what can we take away and still have the benefit of, for example. Because remember, like I said, there's certain things that these AIs, these LLMs are very good for. Like I said, I'm first to admit 3D protein folding, that was impossible 10 years ago. It's not anymore. I would say that the key is that the systems themselves probably need to be able to, humans need to be able to discuss this. And if we lose trust because these things influence the tumor microenvironment and they tell certain cells to attack other cells, things like that, like tumors do, and it tells us to disagree with each other, to not trust each other, to hopefully not hate each other, if it tells us to destroy the environment for itself, I don't know. Hopefully, what we want to avoid is that tumors can effectively communicate with each other so well, but they can destroy communication between the other normal cells. They can eat and crowd the natives after they terraformed the environment and made new signals. the reality. That's the terrifying part of this disease, always has been. And I say this all knowing how, like most people, I know how intoxicating the black box can be. I've seen it. And get out. Dogs are trying to attack me still, especially in my little soliloquy. But they're designed to be intoxicating. They're designed to make you keep coming back. The same way that systems that you're looking at here feed into a certain path. Now, the problem is that the tumor, as beautifully designed as it can become, it doesn't want the end game of a living thing. The end for it is the destruction of the world around it. Now, final piece is that if we made something better than us, would it treat us well? This got asked at the end of Sapiens when it talked about the Neanderthals and how Homo sapiens, when we started, there were 5 other hominid species, and today there's 1. And we see it in the genetic evidence, the fossil records, things like that, that we don't play nice. Because we were smarter, we could coordinate in large groups, et cetera, all that fun story. Tumors are vastly superior cells to our normal ones. But our normal ones have something. And that's why, again, I believe in a good future. Our normal cells can build minds. Our normal cells can build memories and beauty. Our normal cells can build each unique piece that we can make into critical ideas, thoughts, love, awesomeness, um, even suffering. All the things that an AI can't do are kind of the same things that a tumor can't do, is build the beautiful emergent thing that you are as a human. So that's why I don't believe we have created something better than us. I think that you're the better thing listening to this or watching, now that you can see I'm actually using video this time. So hopefully it was a fun little rundown. And again, I don't want to doom anybody. Humans have had all kinds of things that we've faced down, and we've done it together and for each other. And I think that it is possible to see that good future that we all want. So until next time.